You have worked in three different teams at Google, from ads, which is more of enterprising focus, to YouTube and Google Assistants, which is more consumer focus.
India is YouTube's biggest market, like full stop. So the largest number of viewers and creators are from India. India was going to be one of the biggest creator population with like phones. Low-end phones, high-end phones, and not everybody has access to sophisticated devices with video editing tools. Then how is content creation going to happen? How is content consumption going to happen? A lot of people were watching it on their phones. And because of that proliferation of phones and the growth of internet, India was actually a great place to start.
Hi Tanya.
Hi.
Welcome to ISB and to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good as well. Super excited for today. Why don't we start with you introducing yourself to the audience, and what are you up to these days generally?
Sure. So I'm originally from Bangalore, and most recently I've been working with Google as a product manager. So I actually just moved back to India a couple of months back from the US, and I have joined YouTube. I'm working on their new editing app, which is called YouTube Create, and I've been with Google for around 6 years now, since I completed my MBA. And and it's been a really fun journey doing product management. YouTube is amazing. YouTube is a great product, has a lot of market share in India. So it's really exciting to work on such a popular and growing product. And before my MBA, I was a software engineer. So I worked at McAfee for a year, at Amazon for 3 years, all in Bangalore. And I did my MBA from Kellogg, so I was there for a couple of years. And at Google, I've changed multiple roles. I've changed locations. I have changed teams. So I can share about all of my transitions and how they were like.
Yeah, to that, let's talk about your first transition.
Sure.
You've been an software developer engineer for close to 4 years.
Yes.
3 years with Amazon.
Yeah.
How did you find out that you wanted to pursue product management? Was that an experiment? Why I'm asking this is, for me, it was an experiment.
Okay.
I just got into product management and then ended up realizing that this is fun.
Okay.
So what was that about for you? And did that realization take you to do an MBA, or was that vice versa? You were doing an MBA and then you ended up in product management. What was that for you?
So in my application, I wrote that I did an MBA because I wanted to do product management, but that is not the case.
Okay, this is nice, yeah.
Yeah, I actually always wanted to be an engineer. So my father is an engineer, so I always knew that I wanted to be an engineer. And also growing up in Bangalore, you're surrounded by so many engineers. So it was the obvious choice for me. I never really thought about it. But actually, I got introduced to product management when I was at Amazon. So I was working as a software engineer. I was working on one of their then flagship products called Giveaway. And because it was such a big launch, there were a few product managers who were working on that product. So until then, I used to just be in my own corner doing my coding and, always surrounded by engineers. So there was not much of an exposure to what the business looked like. But for that particular launch and product, I got to interact not very closely, but still with some product managers who were working on the product. And they were doing things like pricing and, what's the strategy of the product. They had an end-to-end picture of the product, because typically a product has a lot of sub-products in it. And typically the engineers are working on one of the sub-products. So you don't really have that visibility into all of the products. So which product managers had, and that was very impressive. So for me, that was my first introduction to product management. That didn't directly lead me to doing MBA. So people told me that since you've anyway taken the GMAT, why don't you apply to a few other schools abroad? So I got a consultant for the first essay because I had no idea how to write an essay. So they helped me with the first essay, which I mostly used with some variations in all my applications. So that's how I ended up applying to all these schools abroad. Matter of fact, I did not get into ISB. But I did get an admit from Kellogg, and I did get an admit from IIM Lucknow in my last year. Yeah. So it was actually a very difficult decision for me between IIM Lucknow and Kellogg. But due to multiple reasons, I decided that it would be a good experience and a good learning to, go out of home for me, because I'd never lived out of home. So, go out of home, live by myself, that was more of the experience that I wanted. And yeah, I'm glad the way it worked out. I'm glad that I'm back here where I wanted to be, back in India.
After going to Kellogg, I'm assuming you increased your willingness to be a product manager. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
That was just because that's a natural progression from a software development engineer to product management, or was it more than that?
It was a little more than that. It is a natural progression from software engineering. It's a very natural progression which people think you would do. That is there. But when I was in business school at Kellogg, there were a lot of career talks. There were a lot of people from the technology industry coming and talking about their roles. They talked about what they did in product, what they did in product marketing, what they did in strategy, finance. So tech has all the different roles. Of that, I found product management most exciting because I realized and I discovered through all of these conversations that is the role where you get to work with engineers. And having been an engineer myself, I found that would be, one is comforting because you're surrounded by people you've worked with.
Yeah.
And that I enjoyed my time as an engineer. So I wanted to still be in touch with that engineering side of me when I pivoted. So that was, the more I heard about product management, the more excited it got me in terms of the ownership of the work as well as the collaborators, which were engineers, which was exciting to me. So
got it. In terms of after you found out that you wanted to be a PM, so product manager is not something where you have certain hard skills that you want to learn.
Yeah.
That bunch of soft skills,
Yeah.
Negotiation, stakeholder
Right.
management, ideation, getting those insights.
Yeah.
How did you develop that skill set when you were, applying for product manager roles or building your profile for it?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question, because, it takes, having been an engineer, you already have some of the skill set because you understand the technical products to some extent. You can have technical discussions with engineers, which is one of the requirements of building that skill set. One of that was already taken care of, thankfully. But there are other parts like you mentioned, there's a lot of stakeholder management and product management. Actually, people don't talk much about it, but I think a lot of 70% of the job is stakeholder management, getting everybody aligned, being on the same page, aligning everybody on a roadmap. So that required practice. And, business school is a great place to do that. One is because you're talking to a lot of people. So learning to interact with different kinds of people who will respond to your requests differently, being able to take that reaction and move on, and being able to get work done from others. These are experiences that you can build while in business school. So certain things I did is I was attending a lot of the networking events for technology, although it's not really required for recruitment. For tech, it's mostly a nice to have to do networking just so that you have some connections. Probably they can get connected to you, just make some lukewarm contacts. But I participated in that just to get used to how I could talk to people to see if they're listening to me, to what I'm saying. That was a very good experience. And besides that, I think there are classes that you choose that you can build those skill sets. Like if somebody does not have a technical background, maybe taking some analytics classes because that's very useful for opportunity analysis, etc. Doing some market research classes, like things that are typically part of a product manager's day-to-day job, like tailoring your business school classes to some of that. If you don't have that experience, that's great. But I would also recommend people to take negotiation, thinking about leadership, probably even finance, because there is so much of opportunity analysis, financial forecasting that's required. So there has to be a little bit of diversity in the classes you select, but also make sure that you're building those core skill sets for product.
When anyone asks what a PM is, generally to anyone influential or even to me, the answers typically include that it's customer research, it's listening, it's stakeholder management, it's data analysis, it's execution, and multiple other things. But what it leads to with an impression that doesn't every function perform this? Even an engineer has to do stakeholder management at certain point or the other.
Right.
So why don't you tell us a behind the feature story about a project that you worked upon that can help us deconstruct what a PM does for the audience?
Sounds good. But I'll just give a quick disclaimer that, the role of a product can vary a lot from say a startup to a big tech company. Even within a big tech company, it'll vary from company to company, and even within a company also it varies from products. So, there is a generic definition of what a PM does, but it varies a lot. So I think that's important to remember.
Cover that in a minute at the end of your story, just to help them understand what could that difference look like.
Sure. I can actually talk about a consumer product just as an example so everybody understands it. I had passively worked on YouTube Shorts when YouTube Shorts was first launching in India.
Wow.
And YouTube Shorts actually launched in India before it did. It's one of the products that launched first in India and then in the US.
Let's go.
Given that, Google is a US company. I worked on one part of it, but I just want to take that example example and think out how a product manager would do it. Typically in YouTube, like if it's a big company, you will have multiple product managers working on a launch. But let's just assume that there's just one product manager who's working on launching YouTube Shorts in India, say. So the first thing is, a lot of these products, like people think about how does the idea generation happen. So there are different ways in which the idea generation can happen, right? Some of it can be bottoms up. Like suppose there was a hackathon or a workshop and there was a brainstorming session and engineers came up with an idea, or whoever was participating came up with an idea, and that, went into approval and roadmap and then approved. There are certain things which are top down, like probably the company wants to take a strategic direction and this is a project that needs to be done as a result of that.
Yeah.
Some are external, could be like a regulation or privacy or something that needs to be met. And fourth could be competitive, like maybe there is a competitive analysis, there is the customer research that has happened, you've identified that there is an insight, and then you've gone to build the product. So for Shorts, a lot of it could have been, again, this is my guess because I was not the product manager launching it, but it could have been from competitive analysis. So at that time, TikTok was taking off. At that time, Instagram Reels was taking off. Video was moving to short form content, to vertical content, lightweight creation. And there was a huge rush of content, which was, lightweight, short form, 1 minute. And YouTube likely had gotten some market insights from, so this is where PMs would work with like their counterparts, like from your marketing teams or from your sales team, where you're hearing these feedback. Could be a part of your recurring reviews, or could be like a one-off where you're getting these feedbacks or report. And probably this came out, this idea after going through approvals, etc., came out of that. Now, once the idea is approved and it's, in the building phase, the first thing that needs to be done is you need to define what the product looks like.
Before that, I had a question on the idea part.
Yes.
So your competitor does it. Okay.
Yes.
Instagram is doing this. TikTok in the US is doing it.
Yeah.
Why does it mean that YouTube has to do it? What was that insight behind it that this would work for YouTube and specifically for Indian market? You said that this was first launched in India.
Yeah.
What was that insight like?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things. Some of it is market research and some of it is user research. So the market research essentially gives you like 5 to 10 years, like where does the video industry look like? So, in those kind of reports, you get insights like, most of the people are going to be watching video on living room, just as a hypothetical example, like on your TVs, not on your phones. Probably creation, everybody is going to have a phone. So, those are the insights, those are the market insights that you get, that in the next 10 years, likely everybody is going to have a phone, which means phone is going to be your device of choice for any creation, for any consumption, for anything. So that could be one of the insights. There could be user insights where users are less attentive and they don't want to watch. Probably there is some trend where, longer videos are not getting enough watch time, just as an example. So there could be user trends, there could be market trends, and then there are competitor trends that, it's the opportunity cost of missing out on something, that if you're too late to the market with the product, and if all your key competitors who are in the video industry, video streaming, or are in the ads industry, then that could be one of the factors. And the last one, and always, is revenue. Like if there is an opportunity for, growing the company and getting more revenue from a product, then even if competitors are doing it, that shouldn't be a reason to do it or not to do it. It is more about, does it make sense for your product? Does it make sense? Does it bring growth to your product?
Yeah. And was the hypothesis that let's launch it in India first, see if it's working, and then to the other countries? Or there was specifically something about India that were hooking users to the short form content?
Yeah, there were two things actually. This was also data driven. So first thing is India is YouTube's biggest market, like full stop. So the largest number of viewers and creators are from India. So it's it makes natural sense for Shorts to launch. India is anyway one of the key markets for Shorts. So it made a lot of sense for, Shorts to launch in India. And besides that, India was going to be one of the biggest creator population with like phones, low-end phones, high-end phones, and not everybody has access to sophisticated devices with video editing tools. Then how is content creation going to happen? How is content consumption going to happen? A lot of people were watching it on their phones. And because of that proliferation of phones and the growth of internet, India was actually a great place to start, because again, YouTube's market share was big. So you'll actually get a lot of data also if you launch in a country where you have like a large test base, essentially, and already a popular product.
Let's go back to the idea generation happens, and then you were talking about now what will be the product?
Yes, exactly. So I think defining the product, if anything, is the most important thing that a product manager does. So even if you think about YouTube Shorts, right, as consumers, we would think about, the viewer experience like? How would one like view the shots? What would it look like? How would we like click on it? How would we interact with it, like it, comment on it, whatever? But if you actually just take a step back and think about the YouTube Shorts ecosystem, there are so many stakeholders that you need to think about. So this is exactly the product manager's job. So there is one side, which is your viewer, the people who are watching the shots, interacting with the shots, etc. There is a whole other stakeholder, which is the creator, who is actually creating the content. So you have to think like, so somebody has to create the content for the viewers to watch it. And who are the creators? They are like normal, like regular people like you and I.
Yeah. Who are the users? The creators are also the viewers.
Creators are also the
and
viewers.
The vice versa,
for sure. Yeah. But not all the viewers are creating, right? Creator is a smaller subset of the viewer population. So as a creator, what are the needs of the creator? Like you'll need to provide them a way to upload the shot. You'll need to provide them a way to create the shot. You'll need a way to earn money from shots. So the next part of the product manager's job is, what is the MVP? Like what is the minimum viable product? What is it that we can launch to get it out to the users? And then we can keep iterating. And that is so important, is because you can do everything in the world before you launch a product, but probably you don't even know if that product is going to work or not.
Of course.
So it's the product manager's job to define the MVP. Like, this is what we're going to launch in milestone 1, and then these can come later. And I mean, typically people think about product defining as a PM only job. It's never the case. It's a collaborative process. The product manager is leading the PRD, like the product requirements document, leading defining, but they're working with the engineers to understand the technical challenges. They're working with sales to understand the feedback. They're working with marketing to understand the go-to-market strategy. So all of that is going into the PRD, but it's the PM who's leading that process. So it's a huge responsibility in that sense. Yeah.
What was this MVP for YouTube Shorts? Like, and tell us some stories behind building that MVP, if you can recall.
So I was on the publisher side of things, where I was working with these publishers to get their content onto YouTube. So a lot of that was, one is, talking to the publishers, understanding the different publishers' needs, understanding their catalog, then getting their catalog into YouTube. Essentially, all of their music is on YouTube as music videos. If you think about it, they don't have any music asset, because YouTube is a video streaming platform. It's not a music platform. So for Shorts, there was a whole need for actually getting music as an asset into our systems so that they could be used in Shorts. So there was a lot of custom technology needs that these large partners had, where how are they going to actually ingest millions of audio files into YouTube? So these are the things that I worked on. But there were other teams who were working on the viewer experience, copyright experience, revenue, what else? Creator experience, etc. Like the creation tools, basically of the Shorts app, where you can create the shot, right? Somebody needs to work on that as well.
Another question that I had in mind was, such a feature like YouTube Shorts required too many resources to get it launched, implemented, and I'm sure that there must be a long approval process to get it into the roadmap.
Yeah.
So how does that decision-making and approval process look like in a company like Google? Second, I've heard that a lot of decision-making power in terms of what goes into the roadmap sits or resides in the US with the US teams as compared to India. But as you just mentioned, YouTube Shorts only launched in India. So I think that's changing somewhere in the industry. So what's your take on it?
So on the approval process in big tech, the velocity is definitely lower than it is in startups.
What is velocity?
Velocity is basically the speed of launching, right? Like from the idea generation to the point that you've put the product in the hands of the consumer, that's the time essentially.
Got it.
So that time period is much longer in big tech than it is in a startup. And that's, I think that is just by virtue of how big these tech companies are, because some of these big tech companies have multiple products. So there is a lot of trade-off analysis that's done, right? Like you have probably 10 projects. All the 10 projects are important. Then you will take a data-driven call that which is like the most important for your business based on whatever is the metric. Like somebody may be looking for revenue, someone may be looking for engagement, whatever is your metric. So you will have to prioritize. So there's ruthless prioritization in product.
And there's this metric is on a team level?
It'll be at a team level. It may be at a product level. It could even be at a feature level. Like it depends on what's the group of people working on it. So you will choose and you will allocate bandwidth of engineering and your other resources based on whatever is most important and most likely to move your North Star metric. So that is typically what happens. Yes, but there are a lot of approvals.
So I think in the next segment, I wanted to understand from you from a perspective of a PM who's just starting out, or even who PM with some few years of experience. You have worked in 3 different teams at Google, from ads, which is more of enterprising focus, to YouTube and Google Assistants, which is more consumer focus. As a fresher or someone with a few years of PM in product, should we think about developing a niche or a generalist role? And if developing a niche, this happened with me. I had a fascination with consumer-facing products. And I specifically remember telling my chief product officer that I don't want to work on back-end products. I want to be here. But after a few years of experience building the B2B side or the back-end products, I realized that the problem solving there is fantastic. I mean, the things that I learned about finance and operations and moving the top line, bottom line there, I could never learn on the consumer scene, at least in that company. So what do you think would be your advice to PMs in this scenario?
So I think for PMs who are like just graduating, right? Like, this is completely my opinion. I think going for a niche too soon might actually, I mean, you will not have the chance to actually experience everything that's out there because, and Arushi, it's not only you who wanted to be in consumer products. I think even I wanted to be in consumer products because those are the products we understand because we are the consumers of those products.
More relatable.
Exactly. So we don't understand enterprise, so we think enterprise is not good. That's everybody, including me. But that is not true. And unless you're open to different experiences and different teams, that you will never have that experience and that learning. So my recommendation is not to think about not to go very niche. You may have like an interest area in like maybe you want to do like payments or maybe you want to do like streaming, but it shouldn't be like I want to do only video streaming at YouTube. I wouldn't say that going into a very deterministic and super niche area would be good because then you will not get all of the experiences that you get from everywhere else. Also, I think the opportunities may surprise you. Like if you have a little bit of a broader application set, especially for PMs who are starting out. And I think something which people don't realize when they are just, graduating or are early in their career is that it's going to be okay to change at a later point and you can get to where you want. Your first role is not your final role. I remember when I was graduating out of business school, there was some statistic which said that MBA grads globally changed their first job in 2 years. That may have changed. So which means your first job out of college is not going to be your final job. You have the opportunity to do what you want. But I would say go a little broad when you're a fresh or an entry level. Be open to like newer experiences and potentially what you've not worked on. If there is an opportunity, it'll be helpful.
What's the recruitment process at Google like? And for someone with PM experience, I think you'll cover that. But someone who doesn't have a PM experience, if not Google, in any of the companies, how can they make that transition easier? Very tactically, like what are some things they can do to make that application go through?
Got it. So I heard from you, Arushi, that Google doesn't come on campus. That would have been the easiest way. But Google does recruit off campus. Google is hiring in India aggressively, so good news. So in terms of application process, like from a tactical standpoint, you don't have to be a PM in the past to become a PM at Google after your MBA. That is not a requirement. It's about having transferable skills and relatable skills. So one of the things which I would recommend is when you're looking for opportunities on Google, look for positions where you have some background experience in the past that you can talk to. Like Google does this background matching thing where they look for similar experiences in the past. So again, as an example, like if you have been in a like Razorpay, which is into payments, if you apply to a position at cloud, your chances are lower than if someone from AWS applies to a position at cloud. So just be a little smart about the opportunities that you select. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but you have to have some experience that maybe in a project you did something about payments and that's why you're applying to Google Pay. That makes like the story convincing. So try to find that commonality in the opportunity and in your background. So that's helpful. I think for Google it's important, but I think it will be helpful for all companies, to be honest. Because it just makes your resume shine like, oh, this person has done this. So let's
they
talk to
have
them.
Insights from the industry.
Exactly.
At least.
So that's helpful. Other than that, for Google specifically, like when you're applying, do not like make sure that you're meeting the minimum qualifications. I think a lot of people apply to roles where they're not meeting the minimum qualifications, and I can tell you that is not even eligible for consideration. So look at the minimum qualifications. If you meet that, then go ahead with applying. What else? If you have someone at Google who knows your work and who can refer you, that's a good to have for Google.
Yeah.
You don't have to like go out of your way to get a referral, but if you can, that's a good to have. And I think the networking question comes up a lot. So again, I think the networking is more important for the candidate rather than for the company, because you can get an insight on what is the role like, what is the product like, what's the culture like through your questions. You can tune your questions to kind of infer these from your chats. But the hiring manager or the recruiter is not requiring you to network to get the job. So it's not like VC or consulting where it's absolutely necessary. It's a nice to have. It's more for you than it's for them.
To help you find the right team.
To help you find the right team, because there are so many products and teams at these companies, right? So I would say it's a good to do, but like don't go crazy while doing networking.
For someone who has never done the PM work, and how can they show you that they have that PM mindset? Does building portfolios, case competition, case studies help in the resume shortlisting process or even the interviews?
So how and this is again my opinion, how I think of it is all of the case competitions and everything else that students do. Those are things that will come into the picture when maybe Google is choosing between two candidates and they can't decide and whom to push over the line. That's when they will look at those things. But for the basic selection, it is going to be about your experiences. Your resume is going to be like so important. So in terms of building skill sets, I would say that I think one is to understand like whichever role you're applying to, what are the key responsibilities of that role. So my recommendation is, one is craft your resume to match the opportunity requirement, like the role requirements. So, craft that story that, hey, I can do this because I've done this in the past. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a PM to apply to PM. You can have like an engineering experience, or you can have a marketing experience, and you can talk about the parts that you did which were PM like. And even if the job opportunity doesn't have that, right, there are certain basic things that PMs would do. So from a tactical standpoint, talk to that in terms of that PM role. Even if it's a marketing thing, like what did you do that, helped launch or land the product in the market? That's something that a PM does. So, talking about that experience may be helpful for a product which is probably going to launch soon, and if they're hiring. So that's helpful. From a skill set building perspective, I would say like doing some, projects like with engineers. So it could be like a class, a project that you do, like something practical would be helpful. Like not like I did XYZ classes. It's about I did these projects as a part of these classes. Yeah. Those experiences will be valuable.
That's the beauty of a product manager role. It's so cross-functional.
It is very cross-functional.
That anything that you have done, there'll be some things that you have done which are similar to the role of product manager, and you can highlight that.
Yes, I think that's a great point, right? I think PM is likely the only role where you can, turn your past experience into something which is like a product. It's about crafting that narrative. So the resume is extremely important. And
I think not just from a resume point of view, even if you think in your day-to-day work, if you're an engineer or a marketer, why did the PM of your company has asked you to do it, or the business manager has asked you to do it? I think that will just improve your the entire product building exercise for you.
Yeah, absolutely,
What are the 3 top podcast newsletter resources that you would recommend to a upcoming PM or someone who's already in the industry to stay relevant? It's an ever-changing industry. For you to get the ideas, you need to know what's happening with Instagram, with what's happening with all the products around you. So what are the 3 podcast newsletters that you would recommend people to follow?
I actually follow 2 newsletters, 2 like public newsletters, and a few newsletters of certain AI enthusiasts. So 2 newsletters I would definitely recommend. I enjoy reading them because they're lighter. Also, like I cannot read very dense articles on tech. So TechCrunch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I read TechCrunch. I have like a daily subscription to TechCrunch. So they also have these various areas, like you can read about startups only, or you can read about VCs only, or you can read about big tech only, like if you don't want to read everything, and they have like snippets, etc. So I follow that. Besides that, there is, if you want to go deep, there is a newsletter called Benedict Evans.
Okay.
And he publishes these articles he goes deep philosophical into, why companies are doing AI, for instance. So he'll have this longish article, but it's more philosophical, but it's very helpful to, improve your thinking about why some things are being done or why the industry is moving this way. So I would really recommend that. That's a bit dense as compared to TechCrunch is very lightweight, like snippets, but Benedict Evans is a little dense. Besides that, there is one LLM newsletter that I've recently started following. That's from one of my acquaintances. I actually really follow them because they were my acquaintances.
Okay.
But I actually like that because it talks about a lot of the challenges that models are facing. What are the different types of models? It's very technical, but sometimes it's good to like scroll through to just understand what's happening. So I think the smaller, this AI one is a smaller one, but TechCrunch and Benedict Evans, I would say, is very helpful for general understanding of industry, interview preparation, just knowing what's happening around. I find it very useful.
I think I'll take those links from you and attach to the podcast as well.
Sure.
Let's move to your Kellogg journey, your MBA journey. Why did you select Kellogg specifically? What was that about Kellogg?
Kellogg, it was interesting. I told you my journey to selecting Kellogg. It was, again, not that I wanted to go to Kellogg, but the reason I really liked Kellogg is because one is their application process as well, right? It made me really self-reflect. So again, you will understand this because when I was preparing for CAT, it was a lot about general knowledge, country affairs, world affairs. It was very less about me. Like, who am I? What do I want? What are my goals? The moment I started preparing for not only Kellogg, some of the schools abroad, even for ISB for that matter, it was about what is your goal? Who are you? What have you done? It was not about world affairs or, what's happening in the government or what's happening in the world. That was refreshing for me because that actually was a forcing factor for me to think about what I want, because I had never really thought, what is my short-term goal? What is my long-term goal? I had to think about it to put it down in my essay. The second thing I really liked about, the whole application process was, how they encourage non-work experience. I myself, and I think a lot of Indians, like, we think so much about work, about academics, about all of our basically work experiences, that we don't think so much about the other experiences. Like probably someone likes painting, or someone likes cooking, or someone likes to travel, and what are the learnings from that. So in Kellogg there was like a whole section where you talk about what do you like, what do you do. So in that essay I talked about the fact that I love painting, and things I've painted, things I've gifted to people. I've been on shows where I have like sold my paintings. And I never even thought that it's important from a business school perspective, because nobody cares. They care about me knowing world affairs and current affairs. So that was really good. And the last thing was crafting that story, that okay, this is my long-term goal, this is my short-term goal, this is what I've done, and this is what I like to travel or whatever, and hence why I want to do an MBA. So it was about writing, having that narrative, like this is my story, this is why I want to be there. So that whole process is very encouraging. So it felt like, I was important as an individual.
Yeah.
So that was nice. And Kellogg, generally, I had heard from my peers, etc., that it had a very collaborative culture. I've heard of competition and all of this toxicity in business schools. I had heard from my conversations that was not the case in Kellogg. So that was a little helpful. And I think the other thing was that, from a recruitment perspective also, I think Kellogg was, like most of the recruitment was going into consulting and technology, and I was very sure I wanted to go back to tech because I had a great time when I was working as a software engineer. So that was also one of my criteria, that, are the technology options, recruitment options good? So that it was checking all the boxes. I think that was the reason I, really, loved
I heard
Kellogg's
the same thing about Kellogg, that there's no better collaborative culture than Kellogg. Application process, there was a question that I was writing, what matters to you the most and why? And oh my god, I was so annoyed in the beginning, but I ended up loving it so much that I've never thought about it myself so much, about my goals. It was always passively, I want to build something, I want to do this. But when I penned it down, it came like, actually this can happen. This seems realistic.
Yes, this seems realistic. The story seems cohesive. So
so another interesting bit of your profile, that you take interviews for Kellogg as well. Give a 30-second glimpse into what are the things that struck with you most in general.
I think the reason I started doing it because I love talking to people. That's how we connected. So that's the reason I signed up for it. But I think the most important takeaway is because I learned so much from the interviews than me interviewing them. It's mostly an experience where I'm trying to learn about their experiences and see if they are a fit. But in that process, I have spoken with people who have like worked in Rajasthan with like a group of other business school graduates to launch like a program for women. Like where do you get to hear these stories? Like there was someone in the US who had a shipping company where he had a challenge where his ship was stuck in the dock and he had to go and get it out. So those are, and of course I hear technology stories and different startups, etc., which is also interesting. But I think these mind-blowing stories from these different people who are working in completely different areas which I have no idea about, which is just like mind-blowing, I think.
3 tips for someone who interviewing for Kellogg.
Be prepared.
Okay.
Come with preparation, because when someone is not prepared, it's very evident. Have a plan B.
In the sense?
So essentially, people typically ask, like, what we are trying to judge is that there is an aspect of adaptability, right? Like, you have a plan.
You have a long-term goal.
You have a long-term goal, you have a short-term goal. What if it doesn't work out? Do you have something that you can do instead? So that's something, because of also the current economic situation is not the best, particularly in the US, right? So that's an important question. Like, suppose it doesn't, you want to do this, okay, you absolutely know you want to do this. What if it doesn't work out? Like, what are you going to do then? So it's important to have a plan B just to, showcase, adaptability. What else? And I think those are the 2 big things I would say. And communication, like be open, be friendly, be honest. Like I think that works for all kinds of interviews. Like be honest,
be authentic, be yourself. That's what Kellogg loves as well.
Yes.
Okay, let's do a fun, quick, rapid round.
Sure.
3 most memorable classes or parties at Kellogg.
I'm not a party person. So classes, financial decisions, because I never planned to do finance, and that was just a mind-blowing class. Another one was a trip I took to Israel and Turkey for a market research, which was funded by Kellogg, which was mind-blowing because not only because the countries are beautiful, but also because I was doing obesity research, which I never thought that I would do. So it was a medical equipments company. So that was amazing. And the third best memory would actually be, so there was a case competition. There were not as many as I hear there are at ISB. There was one which was conducted by Microsoft, and I worked with 2 of my friends. One was a school teacher and one was a financial consultant. And because our idea was so creative, coming from 3 so different people, we actually won the Kellogg. We were the Kellogg winner, and then we went on to present to other schools as well. So that was a good memory that I remember.
Interesting. You have been in SD and PM both. Who do you empathize with more right now? There's always a fight going on between the 2 profiles.
Yeah, so I will take a safe answer here. So instead of saying empathize, I would say that it's the onus of the PM to actually build that relationship.
Very PM politics answer.
Yes. So see, I think people need to remember that, if the company has no resources at all, the last man on the ship will be an engineer, because they'll have to build the product. So the PM has to understand that reality and, take that onus to maintain that relationship. Yeah.
Best team you've worked for in Google?
Best team I worked for in Google has to be my first role, which was with YouTube, the copyright management role. It was mind-blowing because it was a very cross geo team, so it was based out of APAC. And I got to see the media side of YouTube. We always think of YouTube as a technology platform, but I saw how big a media player it was. So it was quite mind-blowing for me.
What are you listening to or reading to currently, like right now?
I am currently reading like an old Sidney Sheldon book. So I am like the fan of these old mystery books.
That's the end of the podcast. Thank you so much, Tanya, for flying down and being my first guest. You did wonderful today. I'm sure everyone who's listening to the podcast has so much to learn from you. And yes, looking forward to keep in touch. One last thing.
Yes.
If anyone wants to get in touch with you, for anything, be it getting some guidance or mentorship, how can they reach out to you?
LinkedIn is the right place. I'm a little slow in responding, but I typically look at LinkedIn and then.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Arushi.
Thank you.